Hey friends, it's that time again. It's time for another episode of the Church Online Podcast. My name is Kenny Jahng, your host as always. And today I've got next to me my side is Jeff Reed. This guy is working his tail off for the kingdom these days. If you talk to anybody that knows Jeff, he is not a slouch. He's not a slacker. And guess what? He published a book. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to catch up with him, and we're going to we're going to nerd out a little bit on VR and the Metaverse Church. Welcome, Jeff. How you doing?
Awesome. Hey, great to be here. In the window that I'm looking at, I'm on top of you. Like you're underneath me. So I don't know how much we really want to explore like the locations within the web browser here, but man, it's awesome to hang with you, Kenny.
Let's introduce you to the crowd. For those of you who don't know Jeff, he's been a practitioner. This is what I love, that he's worked in the actual church. And then he's also a partner working alongside church leaders. And right now he's at the forefront, the pioneer edge of so many different things that the church is experiencing right now. So Jeff, why don't you share with us just a little bit of your background and give us your bio, just a quick rundown of who you are. Who's Jeff Reed?
Yeah. So when I graduated from college in 1999, I tried to get a job as a digital pastor, like literally went to churches to try to get them to hire me. And I was really annoyed in the year 2000, after Y2K, by the way. We survived Y2K. Nobody would hire me as a digital pastor. I just could not believe their lack of vision. And so I started my first company, ebeliever.com. It was an online community. We had about 40,000 people around the planet that were part of this online community. We're doing movie reviews, music reviews, online community. We were doing asynchronous. We were doing Facebook before Facebook was Facebook, and
Nice.
with video teaching. Some of the first, honestly, maybe the first sermon online was coming through us. Greg Mott out of Breakaway Ministries down in Texas A&M. There's a throwback if anybody's around in Texas during that era. Hey, so listen, I've just been doing digital ministry for a very long time. I've worked probably 6 or 7 businesses at this point. Started 6 or 7 businesses surrounding church technology and innovation. Did probably 15 years on staff with different churches, creative production, digital ministry, digital strategist, weekend experience director, different roles. But really my heart has always been around helping the church better understand how to do technology. And so we stepped out and walked away from the church job 2018 to start TheChurch.Digital. It's an online company specifically centered around helping the church go digital. And this is beyond just broadcasting church services, which is an important part for most churches, but really starting to focus on discipleship, evangelism, multiplication, scalability, some of these things to really bake digital into the strategy of the church, which nobody cared about in 2018, but all of a sudden this thing called COVID happened in 2020, and I got really popular really quick. And so here I am today.
I like to say, as a former church online pastor myself, it's like COVID is, my soundbite here is that it was revenge of the nerds, right? Before COVID, you're completely invisible at the staff meetings. Everyone thinks that you're like, why is that guy here? What does he do? He plays with invisible people on the web. And now you're like the life of the party. So love the fact that you're here. You actually have a nice community. Why don't we just share with people what that is? Because I think it's a great place to hop in, to have connections and talk with people and learn a little about what's going on in the innovation front.
Yeah, we call it the island of misfit toys, kind of building off your nerd analogy earlier. But it's true. Like, my experience in physical church staff was basically a whole bunch of people telling me, no, Jeff, it doesn't work that way. And so when COVID hit, to be honest, some of my friends said, hey, look, Jeff, you've become Noah and the storm's here. So we created this community. It's called Digital Church Network. Basically, we've invited anybody. It's a free community to come in and gather. Where essentially it's people that are doing digital ministry, digital discipleship, planting churches in digital and metaverse spaces. We've got hundreds of people, maybe 700 at this point. I haven't checked in a while, but 700 people in this from honestly around the world I had the opportunity to speak the other day in Germany. Zoomed into Germany. I was up at like 4 a.m. because of time zones. That was weird. But the flip side of that is now we got a bunch of German people running around the community, meeting people, asking questions. And
Yeah.
so it's at, if you go to digitalchurch.network/join fam, digitalchurch.network/join fam, as in family, the first three letters. That'll get you in there, or digitalchurch.network, click a link, whatever. But the fact is that we've created this community to allow really for care, for coaching. Listen, being an innovator, thinking outside the box, 20 years of being people telling me it doesn't work that way, that messes with your psyche. And so even being around people to bounce ideas off of, to celebrate the wins, to lean on each other with the losses and get feedback, questions why, that's really the heart of what we're trying to do with Digital Church Network. It's been an opportunity for people that are innovative, that are disruptive, that are wanting to do something different, maybe don't know how to, even getting coaching on some of those interpersonal relationships, or what it would look like in some of these areas. That's really what we've created there with DCN, and would love to invite anybody to come in. Kenny hangs in now some with us too, right? You're in there.
Yeah. I love popping in there, meeting some people, having some conversations. It's a good place to hang out. Let's get to your book, because I think this is like, it just came out. Congratulations, VR and the Meta Church. It is available wherever books are sold, Amazon as well. And you should go and support Jeff and the mission that he's doing right now, and get it on Amazon. Give it to every single. It's a great stuffing stocker for your staff and for your volunteers too, to really get a sense of this. Even people that are not involved in the digital ministry fronts of your church, I think this is a pretty interesting read. But the subtitle of the book, Jeff, is How God is Moving in This Virtual Yet Quite Real Reality. And I guess it just begs the question up front of, what is the purpose of this book? What's the net takeaway that you want a reader to have after they finish and put down this book?
Yeah, I was, because of the book and because of, my role with the number of organizations, I've been asked to be on like radio interviews and podcasts, and like, it just, from a guy, if you know me, I'm the guy that's usually behind the video switcher in a dark room, pushing tech buttons. Like I'm not the front of camera guy, and it's been surreal. But I was on this radio interview, and this, most of them are positive. And this one interview I was on, this was not a positive interview. And like, it was really short. The guy was really kind of taking shots right off the bat. The first question he asked me, but he didn't even introduce me. And he's like, hey, this guy believes that virtual reality is real and the church needs to be in there. Hey, Jeff, you don't think if people actually accept Christ in virtual reality, you don't think it counts, do you? And and I looked at the guy. I could see him. We were on a Zoom call together. He was recording it for later, and I was like, "Well, let me ask you a question. If I go and if I have sex with a person in virtual reality, does that count, or is that the safe space where I can do whatever I want and God doesn't care?" And he's like, "Oh, that counts, but that's not no, but it's not." And he's like totally lost his train of thought. The fact is that what we do in this space. Let me say it this way, Kenny. If, in fact, virtual reality is the place where we can hide from God, if Mark Zuckerberg actually created it, he did what man has tried to do for thousands of years, and find a place where we can hide from God. If that has actually happened, theologically, we got a whole mess of problems coming up right here. Listen, virtual reality exists on Earth. These headsets are. Listen, I would, if you want to talk crazy, and I talked about this in the book, if you want to talk crazy, the challenge for us with the Great Commission is Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and into the ends of the earth, right? Virtual reality, these headsets exist on Earth. Virtual reality exists on Earth. If we do end up going to Mars and like starting colonies, there's a theological challenge there. The Bible tells us to go to the ends of the earth. That Mars is not Earth. I'm being sarcastic right now.
Yes.
But the fact is yes, this is virtual. It's not physical. It's not tangible where you can touch it, but the people are real. The relationships are real. The hurt, the pain, this is real. I met a girl. I don't think said her name in the book, so I'm not going to say it in this, but I told her story in the book. So I was doing a talk, was doing a presentation in front of maybe 75 people in Chicago, talking about virtual churches and virtual reality. And I said the word VR chat. I said the word VR chat in this talk. VR chat, it's one of these worlds that exists in virtual reality. This girl, she's sitting off to my left, maybe second or third row. She literally falls out of her seat. Now, I thought she just fell asleep. And so, I kind of laughed. A couple of people laughed, gave her a chance to get back up. And I just kept talking. And the unfortunate reality for her was that I was going to say VR chat about 5 times in the next 30 seconds. And every time I said the words, she had a twitch. She had a tick. She had some sort of movement. It was so awkward. I ended up ending the session or taking a break early, dismissing everybody. I motioned to a woman, stick around, like hang out with me for this. And so I asked her, what's going on? She told me stories of where before she accepted Christ, she accepted Christ 2 or 3 years ago before this, so maybe 5 or 6 years earlier, she was raped in virtual reality, in VR chat. And she said, she was very sexually active in the space. She said that it was before Christ. She found Christ. She walked away from it. But she talked about where some of it was she was driving. Some of it stuff was forced on her. Like even think about this. I talk with counselors, raped in virtual reality. Well, take off the headset. That's no big deal, right? Like just remove yourself from the video game, power off the device, and get out of the equation. For some reason, what damage happened to her was so real that years later, she could not even hear the word that describes the world without having an emotional reaction.
Wow.
And she looks at me and she says, Jeff, because of what happened to me in VR chat, the church has no business being in VR chat. And I just looked at her and I'm like, I'm sorry I have to tell you this, but because of what happened to you in VR chat is exactly why the church has to be there. We have to be there to be the light in these dark places. And these innovators that are going in without, Kenny, when I talk virtual reality churches that are operating in this space, I get 10 times more hate mail than anything else I talk about. Jeff, everybody knows that the Antichrist is going to be born in virtual reality. Jeff, everybody knows that all new technology comes from Satan. It's in the Bible. Hey, Jeff, the number of bad theological guidances people are assuming of this is ridiculous. And to be honest, the other half is if we were really looking at what physical church and what virtual reality church is, they're actually very similar in operation, the way that most churches today are doing it. In fact, a lot of the challenges with virtual reality church, it's consumeristic, it's isolationist, people don't often connect in community. I'll be honest, I can say the same thing with a lot of our physical churches. And so,
absolutely. I always say, Jeff, that there's so many times where I've had, well, back in the day, it used to be called something else, TalkBox. It was a multi-user video conferencing platform.
I remember TalkBox.
So when I went to seminary at night, I'd finish my homework. All the kids and my wife were, in bed, and I didn't know what to do. So I would get online on Twitter, and we'd find some friends. We'd go to TalkBox, and we'd all stay up late talking with all these friends. That's how I met DJ Chuang and a bunch of other guys. And we started a Tuesday night prayer group, et cetera. And I used to say, I know those people more intimately than the people in my row of pew that I go to every single Sunday that I've been going to for years, right? Like just because you have proximity and sitting next to someone doesn't mean that you know them or have relationships with them. And anyway, so I love that story that you're saying that this is, and that we as the church must be present in that space. Now, for those of the people that actually haven't tried VR, right? The majority of the population, mass public, have not actually gone into VR yet. Don't have a headset. What would you say is going to be the tipping point for VR to actually hit mass market. You're starting to see. I mean, I just saw, was it in the Times or the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post, talking about how the new homes post-COVID are being renovated and they're being built with home offices,
Yeah.
Zoom rooms, and now VR spaces, right? But at what point do you think the tipping point is going to happen?
You know, to be honest, I don't know that virtual reality is going to be the thing that's going to take us there. Like when I look at, and this may be anticlimactic, and so I apologize, Kenny, for this if it's flipping you. Nobody, like if you're seeing this on video,
Yeah,
nobody likes the way they look when they
yeah,
wear this headset, and so there's a ton of self consciousness centered around it. Me personally, I'm more interested in augmented reality in 5 to 10 years, and where that goes. You know, Apple Business Insider published this a while back. It was an insider tip where within the Apple board or one of the business executives made the comment that these iPhones will be dead in 10 years. These devices
yeah,
will not exist. And instead, what Apple's predicting in 10 years is going to be the Apple Glass, you know, the Google Glass, the whatever, the augmented reality version
yeah,
of that. And so but I think even that is going to be a mixed reality between augmented and virtual. And so I think going all virtual with the headsets, you know, maybe as the headsets get smaller and they get more refined and the price comes down on that refinement, you know, it makes it more accessible. I could see it doing something. But we're seeing where people don't want to be separated from the physical reality. Most don't. Some do. And for me, like for the people that want to be virtual reality, the people that want access to that space, the church needs to go there. The missional implications, the mission field that exists in virtual reality is phenomenal. Like there's a huge opportunity to go be the church in that space to connect with those people. But if we're talking, you know, mass adoption and globally connecting with the finishing the Great Commission, well, you're going to reach some people in virtual reality. You're going to reach some people with the brick and mortar buildings. You're going to reach some
yeah.
people with the
Yep.
micro. You're going to reach some people in video games. You're going to reach some people in with an augmented approach. And so it's really, for me, it's more about bifurcating ideas, about being missionally imaginative, about doing everything more than locking into one strategy. If there's one thing that I really feel like COVID validated in the church world, it's the one strategy is not going to work. As a result of even the fallout of COVID, it's you're never going to make everybody happy. Try to condense a message down, make it specifically for someone, get them to see it, hear it, get them to understand it, get them to tell somebody else. Get that
Yep.
multiplication effect going through.
You know, I still have my Google Glass, my
Do
headset,
you really?
and yeah, I still have it. And mine were I paid extra for prescription um, lenses and everything. And I just heard recently that there's a big submarket for resales for special needs and some other therapies, etc. And then there was a report, I think just last week or 2 weeks ago, that Apple's mixed reality headset is in production somewhere, and that it's supposed to be due like in April or sometime in the spring. So we'll see what happens on that front. I'm excited for what's going to happen. I'm with you. I don't know if it's going to be a tipping point for mass adoption. AR is definitely, some of the AR stuff hasn't got the press that it should have. Even just projection mapping and all this kind of stuff. Although I saw a funny Instagram reel the other day. You know those Van Gogh. Have you seen the traveling Van Gogh exhibits where you go in? It's fully immersive projections on the walls, etc. And some woman posted, "I can't believe I got suckered into paying $100 to just sit here and watch a screensaver on a wall." So I
That's
think
funny.
that there's obviously there's better uses of AR, but I think AR in retail, AR mass culture is going to be coming down really strong soon. Hey, so back to the book. Who is it aimed for? Like, who's the perfect candidate to sit down and read this book?
You know, to be honest, I would love to say it's the church leader, and I think there's an opportunity for a church leader to maybe explore what the metaverse looks like. You know, maybe it's a church staff person to inform them and prep them for what for what their church should be doing as we're exploring virtual reality and the metaverse. And I would encourage churches to explore virtual reality and figure out what the metaverse looks like. But there's part of me that's like, hey, this book's really written for normal people. Like the typical person that's launching a church in virtual reality is bivocational. Which basically means they've got a 9-to-5 job and they're not paid by the church. They're doing ministry on the side. And so there's a really strong movement of non-paid church people doing ministry, being the church in virtual reality. We tell a lot of those stories. As a matter of fact, there's only one person that I know of in the United States of America, check that, in the entire world, one person that I know of that's full-time paid to do virtual reality ministry. Everybody else, there's maybe, who is it? It's Stuart McPherson out of Lakeland Church up in, Stuart. And so he's the one guy that's full-time. Everybody else is kind of part-time. They're figuring it out. The rest of them, like there are two guys right now that are running Oasis Church. One of them is named VR Tiger. The other one's He Enables. Yes, I do not know their real names, but they've been running a virtual reality church between the two of them and volunteers for I guess about 8 months now. They started in February.
I guess you have to count DJ Soto's full time too, though, right?
DJ Soto is not. My argument with that is that he is not paid by a church. The statement was
not on staff. Not on staff, but he's dedicated full time.
But he is dedicated full time, and he's he's doing basically ain't nobody in virtual reality ministry cashing a check from the church for that. The tithes through for VR Church are very minimal, and so he's running side projects, side hustles to try to generate the funds, and he's built a team around him that's helping him figure out how to monetize things. But that's really becoming a very interesting model, especially as we're talking about churches that exist only in digital space, digital church planting, churches that only exist in the metaverse, because like nobody's funding this stuff. There's only of the hundreds of churches that I work with, there's only maybe 2 or 3 that are funded like 100% of their budget. Everybody else is Bible. I can tell you a story of a guy that's on Facebook. It's a husband and wife co-pastorship. They are reaching something like 17,000 people a week. 51% of their audience is outside of the United States. They're doing 1,000 small groups regularly. And they're both bivocational. They're operating budgets like $40,000 a year. And so, it's almost like this is the new model of pastor, where it doesn't have to be that seminary degree, and you don't need to get that massive check. It's trying to figure out how to scale things on the cheap digitally, how to utilize volunteers more effectively. Like there's a really interesting model of church growing that looks exactly opposite from the mega church model that we were all striving for, before COVID.
What do you think is the biggest misperception of VR and the Metaverse Church? The number one misperception?
That it's not real. I mean, we were hinting at it earlier, that relationships aren't real. It's interesting. I actually, when I talk with the physical church pastor, Jeff, like even the fact that I don't know He Enables and VR Tiger, their names, their physical names, the average person would view that as a negative. I actually view that as this huge positive, because what happens is when I now talk to someone I don't know in virtual reality, holy cow, the quickness that we get into deep, dark stuff, the quicker that they bear their soul open, it's like almost instantaneous. And you think, we talk about this with like online small groups and doing online discipleship, like on Zoom, it is quick there. It's even quicker in virtual reality, because I don't even know where this person is, who they are, what they look like, what their name is. I know nothing about them. So they are completely open to share anything, because there is no way that I, as a pastor, can judge them. And so the fact that I don't know who this person's name is, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that in real life. Like, I'm not talking going back to like the Catholic confessionals or
Yeah.
anything, but man, what would it be like to just walk up to somebody and have a conversation where they're openly and publicly sharing where they are and what their view of God is, and where I am not responding with hate because of that. I'm actually welcoming it. Like, there's stories in the book where Satanists and neo pagans are finding Christ in virtual reality. And it's over the course of an 8-month relationship. It's not like, oh, let me explain to you who Jesus is. This person actually came in to troll the church. And instead of the church kicking them out like they could using admin, they invited them in, they muted them until they calmed down, and they said, be part of the conversation. The person was helping run their tech 3 weeks into the relationship, 8 months into the relationship, they accept Christ, and now they actually help plant churches. They're a person of peace in a metaverse area called Rec Room. Like, this is the growth of someone. Do I know what their name is? No. Does it invalidate anything? Not really. Could they be going behind my back and doing all sorts of crazy stuff in physical space? Well, yeah, but so could people that are attending your physical church. Like, some level, you still got to have that level of trust, right? I mean, this is really the
Yeah.
consistency when we're talking about digital and metaverse. A lot of the stuff that people would accuse a virtual reality church of, the fact is, physical church is not that far off in many situations.
What about mental health? Like, I think, and counseling and stuff like that. You talk about that in the book of like um this ease of shifting into an anonymous place where you actually can bare your soul and be much more transparent and honest, then just accelerates the pathway to uncovering where pastoral care counseling is needed. um how is the church going to handle that? Because most churches, to be frankly, in real life, isn't fully equipped to handle that counseling need many times.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be on once again, consistency. Mental health in the metaverse is super scary for me. I mean, we just talked about it, right? We're bringing
Yeah, yeah.
bivocational people, volunteers, and doing ministry in this space, and they're dealing with a higher level of alcoholism, of drug abuse, of sexual abuse. I mean, shoot, even virtual reality in itself is an addictive behavior. So is digital ministry. And so we're asking these volunteers, we're asking these normal people, we're asking even our seminary trained people to go into these areas. And we don't. Like, even our seminary trained pastors don't have solid answers for how to deal with someone that's suicidal. And so, like, for me, this is the biggest thing that I want to dive into in 2023. We're doing the Digital Church Network and the Church.Digital. We're doing a number of research projects, but this is the one thing for me that I want to help solve. I actually, and this is not in digital space, in metaverse. I'm sorry, it's not a metaverse space; it's digital. But I had a digital pastor, a very good friend of mine. I tried to commit suicide earlier this year, and I asked, why? Why did you try to commit suicide? Her husband caught her, stopped the pills, like everything was solved well. But her answer was, it was dark. I was alone, and it basically equated to secondhand trauma. She got so overwhelmed by the stuff that was in her life, she tried to commit suicide. Thankfully, like I said, her husband stopped her, and we were able to get her the help that she needed, and she's on a much healthier path now. But how do we help future generations, future pastors, whether digital, which is my biggest concern, but even in the physical space? How do we prepare people to better answer that? Right now, Kenny, I don't have that answer. I mean, I hope to find that answer, and I want to surround myself with the people that are passionate about getting to that conclusion as well.
There's so many things I want to explore with you further. One of the questions I have as we wrap up our remaining time is, for someone who actually is going to earnestly sit down, read your book, and then start to explore, there are several different spaces, alt space VR, rec room, there's VR chat, as you said. Meta Horizons, right? Like is the big one. Where does someone start? I would say, why don't we leave off with like a really, really good practical thing for someone to Google and start researching
Yeah.
and looking at.
Probably the safest answer would be AltSpace VR. AltSpace is owned by Microsoft, and so it has strong parental controls. You're not going to see naked avatars walking around. It's, the average age in there is it's blended. It's 18 to 85, but because of the parental controls, because it's Microsoft, I call it virtual reality on training wheels. You're not going to get exposed to some of the craziness of VR chat and even Rec Room. Rec Room is more younger based because it's based off of PlayStation VR and Xbox VR. I joke that you're more likely to get cussed out by a 16-year-old in Rec Room than any other platform. Virtual reality, VR chat is the wild, wild west. Like that's where you're going. There's no parental controls. Right. There's no governing. Like I think some rich guy in Iran owns it. Like it's literally it's anything goes. And so, which, hey, listen, those people need God, but you need to know what you're getting into when you get into that. So I would recommend AltSpace. Now there's a black horse in this one that I've seen a lot of churches have more success with recently. If your church is very strong video content, now I'm not talking a 200-person church that's got a camera in the back. No, you're not strong in video content. I love you as a church, but you're not strong in video content. If you run a switcher, you know how to light video well, you've got multiple cameras, you're producing stuff. A lot of our multi-site friends out there that do video teaching know how to do this. There's a relatively new world that's called big screens, and so it's basically become the Netflix of virtual reality. And
it's
so
like movies and stuff, right?
I'm sorry.
It's like for movies and
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why it's not really about avatars walking around and community and sitting out at the campfire. It's not relational because it's more about going into a virtual reality movie theater, taking up one of the 400 seats in the room, and broadcasting stuff. That being said, I've got a church up there. I'm down here in Miami, Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale, has seen over 200 people accept Christ in their big screen environment. And they do alpha in big screen. They do Christ-centered recovery in there. Like they are fully investing in the big screen. So it's not as community-based as AltSpace and some of the others because it's very limited in the world building or the world itself. But it's been effective for churches that have quality video to work with. So I'll throw that as two options.
But I will say, I think from what the little I know about big screen, they have chats.
Yeah.
You can have private rooms, public rooms, right? There are a lot of the things that is still interactive, right? It's not just
right.
I just don't want everyone to think like, oh, it's just a place to watch.
No. Yeah, there's interactive avatars. The downside, let me paint it this way. I coach some of my friends in virtual reality, some of the pastors. Hey, go hang out in like other people's worlds and just start to talk about Jesus. And so in AltSpace VR, the big thing is the campfire. And so people go at the campfire, literally from around the world. People will come in and will sit down at this virtual reality campfire and just talk about whatever. And so there's a lot of interactivity. When I talk about planning a church in virtual reality or like in AltSpace, I would almost draw the picture of like planting a church in your little town, in your neighborhood, in your city, in your community, wherever you live, and then engaging with the different stores, the businesses. Like that's virtual reality worlds within AltSpace. Start to engage within the community of AltSpace. And so you're hamstrung in the big screen approach, but you do have this video curriculum, video opportunity. It communicates, it makes virtual reality something different than just the avatar. It's a different spin on it that plays well with some churches.
Hey, so VR and the Metaverse Church, how God is moving in the virtual yet quite real reality. Yeah, pick it up. Let's support Jeff here, and you can learn something and share it with a colleague, a peer, a friend. Tell us where we can get it. I believe it's available on Amazon, but there's also other places to get this now, right?
Yeah, sure. We've created a hub for all of this. So there's links. And I'll be honest with you right here on the air, you can download it for free. Would love for you to support and buy the book on Amazon because dang it, we would like to, pay off the book. But hey, you know what? Download it, share it with some friends, give it to your pastor. You can go to TheChurch.Digital, TheChurch.Digital/VR book, TheChurch.Digital/VR book. And that'll get you directed to the page, and feel free to download it. Click the link to Amazon to buy it, put it on your Kindle, share with your friends. My hope is really, I want to see people take advantage truly of this great missional opportunity, maybe one of the greatest mission fields that America has realized in recent history, and that's virtual reality. Adoption rates may not be high. 17%, like it's still pretty high. But there's just a huge opportunity to engage with people in these spaces that are looking to have conversations. They want to talk about this stuff. And so this is the great opportunity we have ahead for us.
Thank you, Jeff. You're a gift to the kingdom. As we close, if someone wanted to follow up with you, learn more about your ministry, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you directly?
Yeah, I'll tell you. You can hit my website, TheChurch.Digital. And I'll give you my cell phone right here on the air, 484-324-8724. If you speak telephone alphabet, that's number 4, the church, 484-324-8724. Would love to connect, and however I can help your church, going aggressive with this stuff, trying to understand discipleship within your church, dealing with leadership that struggles to see vision. That's the world I live in, so would love to help however I can.
Thank you, Jeff, for spending some time with us. And everybody, remember, VR and the Metaverse Church, Jeff Reed. Look it up on Amazon, download it, share it with some friends. Thank you, Jeff, for being with us today. We'll catch you here next time on the Church Online Podcast. I'm Kenny Jahng. And remember, in the meantime, be social, stay social.